Well, now that we've talked about prospecting strategy, we next need to talk about verticals. What types of businesses do we want to target? Now, the good news is that, it's so interesting for me being a sales trainer in this industry because if I look back even a year and a half ago, even a year ago, the advice I was giving about which verticals to target has changed dramatically because cash discounting, frankly, has just become very widely accepted in almost every vertical. And so, whereas a year and a half ago, I would have had to say, hey, there's these few verticals you want to go after, and that's it. Don't go after any of the other ones. That's really not the advice I have for you today in this video because it really has evolved. It's matured, this concept in our industry. And so, my goal in this video is two things. Number one, I want to talk to you about certain verticals to avoid. There are certain ones that you just want to stay away from, especially initially when you're just getting into this business. And number two, I want to talk to you about the easiest ones to go after, the ones that are just going to be like the low-hanging fruit, where if they're not already doing cash discounting, they probably heard of it, and they're probably going to have a higher likelihood of being interested, okay? So let's start with the ones that you really want to avoid, okay? The ones that you really want to avoid are going to be really two different types of businesses. Number one, you want to avoid businesses where there is some kind of a tip adjust setup, okay? Now, I'm not going to get into all the details in this video because the whole purpose of this training course is to keep it really simple. I have other training that you'll go through later that can go through a lot of this other information and kind of the nitty-gritty of it. But the bottom line is we talked about how cash discounting works, right? And we have the price increase, right? And then we have the cash discount, and then we have to collect that money and we have to offset the fees. And so all of that makes a lot of sense for, let's say, a transaction that's $100. Where we start to run into problems is where we have a $100 transaction that after the person signs the receipt, they've added a 20% tip. Okay. Well, now all of a sudden, how much were we supposed to charge them for the, for this extra? How much was the price increase supposed to be? How much were we supposed to collect from them? And so it starts to get a little bit more complicated. Now, having said that, restaurants, hair and nail salons, places like that do a lot of tips. Those have actually become really hot verticals for cash discounting. So I don't want to give you the wrong impression that those types of businesses don't like cash discounting. They love it. It's just that it's a little bit more challenging to explain and it's a lot harder to set up. Okay. And so my advice is to steer clear of those initially. All right. So anything where there's a tip, you want to kind of steer clear of that. Number two, any businesses that are extremely competitive, all right? Businesses that are extremely competitive. Businesses, some retail businesses that are just barely hanging on, I'll give you an example of this. Convenience stores. Some of these convenience stores, they can be very challenging to go after. They're very competitive. There's lots of places people can go to buy a Snickers bar and a Pepsi. What they do is kind of a very competitive thing. And so in those situations, that is one where you would really want to stay away from those initially. To give you even a more specific example, usually these really competitive businesses I'm talking about have a lower average ticket size as well. So a convenience store, again, being a great example of this. Another one might be a hot dog stand or a coffee shop. Okay. These are businesses where, again, it's easy to buy a cup of coffee. You can go anywhere you want. There are hundreds of coffee shops probably in your area alone, right? And so these places like that are super competitive, that also have a low average ticket size, we want to steer clear of those initially. Now, again, I will tell you, I know salespeople that sell coffee shops like crazy on cash discounting, but it's a little bit different. It's more of a shared cost model. You're not going to save them as much because of the low average ticket size. There's some things that go into that we're not going to get into in this training course, but you want to kind of steer clear of those. All right. Everything else is fair game. Now, there are a few business types that I have found that are extremely interested in these programs. Okay. Number one on my list is auto repair shops. This would include even like tire and lube places, anything having to do with auto. So check out auto repair. I would even go so far as to say that in your market, if you really want to get off to a fast start, go to Google Maps and pull the list for your prospecting, pull the list of all the auto repair, tire and lube, transmission, auto body repair, all of the places having to do with automotive. Go specifically after those businesses. and you are not going to be disappointed. That is going to be a really, really good way to go. Okay. So number one on my list is auto repair. That's a great one to go after, what I call low hanging fruit. Really, really good one for you to tackle. Okay. And by the way, one of the main reasons for that is most auto repair places are not what you would consider very competitive. Most auto repair places don't even consider themselves competing for business. They really don't. They have their existing set of clients. They generally get calls from people all the time that need some auto repair work done. And they're like, no, we're not taking any new clients on. It's usually not a super competitive business. Okay. So for them, they aren't going to have as big of a concern about, their customers being upset about a fee or a price increase or something like that. So they're generally going to be more interested. Okay. Now, a second one is liquor stores. Liquor stores usually love this kind of thing. Now, there are a few kind of state regulations some of them may have questions about. You'll have to do a little bit of research in your local area as far as what can be done there. But that's another really good one for you to go after. A lot of the specialty retail, those are just perfect for this. So when I talk about specialty retail, I'm talking about hobby stores, right? Stores that maybe it's a consignment shop, places that are selling things that other people in the area just simply aren't selling. You literally need to drive an hour to get to a place that sells this one thing. That's a great place to go. To sell cash discounting, because again, there's not that competitive feeling for them. They're going to be much more interested in it right off the bat. They get it. You're reducing, their costs and all of that. And so those are a few of the ones. So specialty retail, auto repair, liquor stores, those are some that you can go after that are just going to be much higher likelihood of being interested. Now, again, that doesn't mean they're going to lay down and say, please sign me up, but it just means that statistically they're a little more likely to be interested. So again, hopefully that helps you. There's obviously a huge white space in the middle of other business types to go after. I'll give you a really interesting one. Pizza shops were always one of my favorites to go after, which is interesting because a lot of the pizza shops actually do have a tip adjust. And so where you struggle sometimes is like, do I want to go to this pizza shop or not? Well, if it's pizza shop dine in, then that part of the business might be a little more tricky. But a lot of the smaller pizza shops, they really don't do dine in. They just do like delivery. People come in and pick up their pizza. If that's the case, that is a terrific one to go after. Same goes for like cafes, little places that maybe have food. You would come in like a food marketplace. So there's a lot of gray area there. And again, there's a lot of white space in the middle. Long story short, almost every business in your market, if you explain it correctly, they're going to have some interest in cash discounting. But I hope that this video will give you a little bit of a leg up to know who to go after initially to help you get those first 10 accounts, which frankly, you could probably get just by going after auto repair in your local market.